This week's episode was brought to you by Mark and Not Your Cup of Tea. Thank you, Mark and Not Your Cup of Tea. It's with the continued support of listeners just like you that keeps our collective podcast enchilada full of accursed cheese from the curdled milk of an unholy cow from the mysterious ranch in New Mexico, which we consume ceremonially by candlelight at midnight during the full moon in order to attain the infernal wisdom by a continued telepathic connection to the fallen angels who reside in the dark caverns of the earth where we are building our spaceship to escape this end-of-the-world scenario we're discussing today. If you'd like a seat on our spaceship or just want to hear the second half of this episode, then please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you the extended version of this episode, but every single one of our episodes, which at this point is getting quite voluminous. Heck, I'll even send you a high-quality 5x5-inch vinyl sticker of our Big Bunny Baphomet cover art, and you'll even get the keys to our private Discord server where our Illuminati roundtables, tended by the hosts and listeners of The Whole Rabbit day and night. If you enjoyed The Whole Rabbit and maybe just want to help us out, then please consider sharing the episode on your favorite social media platform, or even with a real-life person that won't be bothered that the world is about to end. In this week's apocalyptic episode, we discuss the end of the world, Part 2, and how it may be prophesied by both science and religious mythology from around the globe, operating at a scale which can only be described as galactic in scope. In the free side of the show, we detail the archaeological and mythological evidence for the Great Flood and the Antediluvian Civilizations which preceded it. We dive into how esoteric Christianity has safeguarded these secrets for years, and what the heck it all has to do with the Age of Aquarius. In the extended side of the show, we take a break to discuss survival tips before going all the damn way down the rabbit hole to continue our exploration of how the constellation and mythology of Sagittarius indicate the unavoidable source of our doom, and how mythology and recently emerging science only thinly obscures this uncomfortable and greatly secret truth. Heck made me promise that we'd publish a free article on our Patreon on how to survive, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Past week I made a couple bucks selling fake Eclipse glasses. Not too worried though, the suckers never see me again. You know why the world hasn't ended? Because it's round. But why did the great woolly mammoths cross the road?
Wow.
Because they didn't have chickens in the Ice Age.
This is true.
Everything that went extinct before the Ice Age was a hipster. They were dying before it was cool. What time is it when a great woolly mammoth sits on your igloo?
What time?
Time to build a new igloo.
That's silly.
Hello everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we don't just tell you that nuclear war is imminent, and if that doesn't kill every single one of us, and the pole shifts and supermassive volcanoes certainly will. Nay, we go so far down this end-of-the-world rabbit hole that we arrive at what very well may be the source. Nay, the beating heart of an entire cycle of catastrophes, a rhythmic beating which pulses throughout the vastness of the cosmos, because this week we're discussing the end of the world, Part 2, and how nearly all occult, spiritual, and religious mythologies from around the globe point to this apocalyptic cycle of events that may be well coming back around sooner than we'd like to imagine. I'm your host, Luke Madrid, also known as the Hack Rabbit. I'm joined this week, once again, by my co-hosts, the dog creature from the Younger Dryas, Mori-sama.
Awoo!
The third Antichrist, Melkor 5.
What's up?
And the magnificent messenger of the catastrophe, Heka Astra.
Hello and goodbye.
So we really have you to thank for the nightmares this week, Heka.
Well, I'm sorry, but you're welcome.
Now, I think you were going to whet our appetites for this nightmare with some classical literature.
Yeah, last week and this week, the episode topics bring to mind one of my favorite poems by Robert Frost called Fire and Ice. And I know this off by heart, but it's also in the show notes. Some say the world will end in fire. Others say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if I had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice.
So on the one hand, it's fun to die with a boner. But on the other hand, it's fun to die cozy. Live slow, die cozy. I have to confess, it's not just a joke. I used to be one of those cringe EDM hippies who thought that there may actually be some catastrophic event that coincided with the winter solstice of 2012, and I did spend countless hours with friends researching anything related to this topic. I even threw a few parties about it. I'm proud of them. And no, the world never ended. But some of us did think the world would end. Some thought demons would invade. Others thought that time would stand still. A popular one in the group was that we'd go blind for 3 days, but we'd wake up renewed with psychic powers. I personally hoped the aliens would land and say hello, but sadly, the day never came, and the solstice came and went with little fanfare. That being said, many of us did understand that in terms of the galactic scale of events, a decade or even 100 years are like enormous to a human, but to the universe they're actually quite small. And so while life goes on, we're left to wonder, was there any truth to that enormous mountain of speculation? Well, as fate would have it, due to the highly intense and unorthodox way of writing and researching the show each week, we sometimes fall a little further down the rabbit hole than we expected to, and now we have to explain it to you. So I know this is a passionate topic for all of us. Malcor's been trying to get us to look down this particular alley for like 2 years now on the show. And then Heka fell down this rabbit hole for the last few weeks. It's like all she'll talk about with me. And we had some puzzle pieces out on the table from our last few episodes talking about the Age of Aquarius, and Heka really put some big pieces together. And I think we may have stumbled upon a big occult secret that we're probably not supposed to talk about on a podcast. And we're gonna sound crazy. And I actually don't like it. So here we go. Let's explain this.
Sorry, not sorry.
It's a lot of information to break down, so we'll try and like bite-size it out. But now you know what's coming. This is the real deal. So our story starts in the Younger Dryas at the end of the last ice age. What is that exactly?
Well, the Younger Dryas period. Sorry, let me try that again. Well,
Dry
Dryas. Well, specifically, the Younger Dryas period is an abrupt transitional climate event that occurred through 12,900 through 11,700 years ago.
That's because the dinosaurs are driving too many cars.
So when I was researching this, I actually found an official document from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is a government agency that studies, climate change, weather over like large periods of time, and also historical data on weather and other types of climate events. So they described it as a near glacial period that's named after a flower, the Dryas octopetala, that grows in cold conditions, which became common in Europe during this time in our history. So beginning around 12,900 years ago, Earth's northern hemisphere suddenly experienced an abnormally intense freezing over, while the southern hemisphere warmed substantially. Antarctica was particularly toasty at this time, too, and may not have even had ice on it for all we know. For example, the ice probably had melted and started carving some cliffs, rivers, and mountains around the southern continents. But as things went along, and this was like literally not even a little bit over 1,000 years, so it's a very short millennial period. But as it progressed, the temperatures began to normalize once again. And this is a very short period of time. So all of a sudden, glaciers and ice sheets in the north would begin to melt and slide south after the initial overchilling of the northern hemisphere began to thaw. And this resulted in the continental landscape being carved and melted by erosion into features like islands, lakes, fjords, cliffs, rivers, deltas, canyons, valleys, and even cave systems. Of course, as you could imagine, the constant changes in the sediment and rocks during this recorded period reflect a great flood. And this deluge caused significant changes to both the climate and the landscape. So later on in this document, it kind of talks a little bit more about that with some citations that, if you're interested, they're in the notes. So the end of the Younger Dryas, about 11,500 years ago, it was particularly abrupt. In Greenland, temperatures rose 10 degrees Celsius or 18 degrees Fahrenheit in just a decade. Other proxy records, including varved or layered lake sediments in Europe, also display these abrupt shifts. From what I could gather from this documentation, the Younger Dryas was a period of transition between the most most recent previous ice age into this current paleontological age, the Holocene, which sounds pretty cool. I'm glad. It sounds like we're in a rave or something in the geological time scale.
So instead of calling it the Younger Dryas, they could have called it the Younger Octopetella?
Yeah.
Octopetala?
Well, that's the species.
I
But
think they called it the Younger Dryas because everyone got wet. It was a flood.
yeah, makes sense.
I mean, that's what all the erosion is from, right? There's evidence that there was a lot of water.
Yeah, like the Great Lakes were carved out of glaciers, just dragging their ass through the sediment. And like seas are caused, also runoff creates rivers and delta systems and even islands. Like there's a lot going on. And then I didn't even touch on the effects it had to animal populations, ecology, like plants. We also know like there were large mammals that were present during the Ice Age, like woolly mammoth and saber-toothed tiger were just some of the most popular ones, but they all just suddenly died because the glaciers just melted out of nowhere.
I mean, like, you ever go driving, your parents are like, you see why the mountain looks that way? It's because it was underwater once. And you see that mountain over there? It's because it was underwater once. It's like, everywhere was underwater once.
Yeah.
Why is that?
It's funny because a lot of people think, oh, that was like millions of years ago. Well, actually,
It just happened.
No!
yeah, proof is in the pudding. The mud pudding.
And boys, there are a lot of it.
Mississippi mud pie.
Diddy's house.
In modern times, we can find this evidence in fossils. By the way, I fucking love dinosaurs.
Heka likes anything that goes chomp. She likes anything with teeth that go chomp chomp.
You can call me a Hecatosaurus Rex.
I will.
Okay.
I'll be a megalodog.
Oh, I like that.
Half man, half shark, half dog.
So in order for fossilization to occur, organic matter has to be quickly buried in sediment like mud, sand, or volcanic ash, and then left undisturbed by the usual suspects of predators, scavengers, and the regular earthly elements. When sediment like mud or ash is dried and subjected to intense heat, it forms a very solid and thick layer, trapping the organic matter beneath it.
Like a mud mummy. It's not the actual bone you're finding. It's something that was left behind from a mud mummy.
This is why we're not currently making a whole lot of fossils right now, is because we don't have the environment to be doing it. A lot of scavengers and predators will eat all that there is to eat, and there's not anything left to become a fossil. So this is a very particular circumstance that actually makes a fossil. Surrounded by the newly formed rock, the organic matter is left to dissolve. Sometimes it's filled with groundwater and minerals. Other times it has bacterial decay. There's even the possibility that the organic matter burns away in the same intense heat that forms the stone around it. So this would be kind of like if you fired some clay in a kiln, but it happened to have a bug inside of it, except it's a much bigger kiln, and the clay has an entire animal or dinosaur inside of the clay.
So the organic matter is burned up, but it leaves behind a trace of something.
That can happen. It's not the only way to make a fossil. Most often we think of fossils as being bones and teeth, or even hard shells, but really anything organic can be fossilized, including delicate plant matter and footprint.
And poop.
Ugh, and poop.
What about cheese?
I'm sure you could fossilize cheese.
So aged.
So because it takes a special and rare set of circumstances to create fossils, it should be surprising that we have any at all. But this is also, I think, where it gets kind of weird.
You gotta be like a pelican flying over some special goop and have a heart attack at that exact moment because you see something scary like a dragon and you fall into the goop. Fossil.
We have many examples of very strange circumstances in fossils across the globe. We have perfectly preserved bees, where we can see the minute details on its wing. We have opossum fossils discovered next to large marine mammal fossils. That doesn't make sense, given their vastly different requirements for habitation.
They met online.
One curious fossil example shows a squid that was in the process of eating a herring, having just crushed its skull. They were entangled together when they were suddenly buried and ultimately in turn fossilized together.
What?
And this is not the only occurrence of being caught mid-meal during burial. There's actually a lot of fossil examples of that. There's fish eating smaller fish. There's a rapinamammoth attacking a Psittacosaurus.
Would you call me?
I don't know how to respond to that.
Just say the name again of the dinosaur.
Psittacosaurus.
We trying to be rich before we all stop breathing.
We've seen colonies of marine life, entire colonies, has been discovered set in stone on mountaintops, like the fossils of sea lilies found in the rocks on the top of Mount Everest. This brings the Egyptian Nefertem, the god Nefertem, to mind for me, because lilies grow in mud. So somehow the top of Mount Everest was covered in mud. Strange, right?
Whoa.
That is crazy, but it also just might be rich people not picking up after themselves.
Yeah, just, discarding lily bulbs. Okay.
Well, there's just a lot of poop on Mount Everest
Dead
Oh my
people.
and dead people.
Because it's a metaphor about climbing over each other to the top and leaving people to die who can't make it. So you're supposed to learn something like a moral lesson. Like, if you need to step on somebody's head to get above them and advance, that's what you should do, right?
No.
That's what it says in the Bible.
That's like some Mortal Kombat shit.
Primal rage.
It's not rage, it's just being practical. It's learning how to do business in the real world. Please continue.
So we're also talking about entire colonies of marine life fossils, entire shoals of fish and squid, pods of marine mammals, beds of clams, arthropods like trilobites, cephalopods like belemnites and ammonites, which are marine cephalopods with shells, large marine reptiles like ichthyosaurs, and the more recent discovery of entire families of ground sloths, giant ground sloths, Megalonyx jeffersoni in Iowa, and those date from 10 to 12,000 years ago. There's a whole family.
It's like a mixture of marine life with land life that shouldn't be commingled, like surf and turf.
Yeah, and entire families of these things.
And they didn't have Sizzler 10,000 years ago.
And the list just goes on and on for each event that causes fossilization throughout history. We have many examples of dinosaurs and mammals as they were caught in surprised death postures, rearing back as they get buried. Like, ah!
I mean, do you think animals could escape a mud flood?
Not if it's fast enough and big enough. And what about the fossils of the aerial beast varieties?
My favorite. You know what they should have called it? A steroidal flood.
Steroidal flood?
Yeah, because it's a flood on steroids. Get it?
I get it.
Okay, what about flying animals?
Like, would they escape a mud flood?
Yeah, they
Not
got
necess-
wings.
Not necessarily. If it happened suddenly, if the tsunami was big enough and fast enough, it would explain why we've also discovered such a huge variety of fossils from animals that fly. And we found them in every recurrent fossilization period, from the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous to the Mesozoic and far beyond. So that includes pterosaurs, Eocene-era pelicans, and more.
You're just like a big quadruple-sized seagull flying along, looking for a buffalo to eat. Next thing you know, big-ass wave takes you out, dumbass seagull. Now your ancestors are gonna be tiny as punishment.
1,000-foot mud flood. So this information portrays a high likelihood of cyclical muddy floods of epic biblical proportions. We have discovered fossils of mammals in the process of giving birth, where they were frozen in time very suddenly. All of these examples paint the scenarios of what we could call perfect snapshots.
Like Han Solo.
Frozen in carbonite, except muddy moments of what these animals were doing at the time of their immediate burials under earth and water.
So you're saying those people online that talk about the mud flood, they may be a little bit right.
Yes, emphatically yes.
No!
Not just some evidence, but a tremendous amount of evidence.
Oh.
So much so.
This. Seriously?
Yes, so much so that to cast it aside as a far-fetched idea could be nothing other than willful ignorance, especially when you take into consideration some spooky evidence that these apocalyptic scenarios seem to correspond to the end of civilizations, maybe.
Oh, like Atlantis and Lemuria and the Fire Festival.
And moo.
What'd you say about my mom?
Moo. Which of course brings us
I've had it with this abuse.
Which, of course, brings us to the topic of antediluvian civilizations. Could this be a reality of history?
Everyone says it is.
You know, I used to think it was ridiculous, but here we go. Antediluvian refers to a time before the biblical flood. Ante meaning before, and diluvian being of Latin origin meaning flood. It shares the same root as the word deluge. So if mud floods recur in a cyclical fashion, not every one of them would be the exact same.
Like a rainbow of catastrophes.
Yeah, sliding scale. They would probably be estimated as occurring on a sliding scale of catastrophic severity, say 1 through 10, approximately every 12,000 years, and they would likely be part of a series of events that affect each other. For example, the Gothenburg magnetic reversal happened 12,400 to 12,350 years ago, and the Younger Dryas mentioned earlier, 12,900 to 11,700 years ago. They happen to coincide.
They like almost overlap there, don't they?
Yes, I do, over and over again.
Well, that's
Every
comforting.
12,000 years. Yeah. Shout out also to the 6,000 year lesser cycles, which also coincide with this, and that all of these also coincide with geomagnetic excursions. It gets nuts. So, if this is the case, then what happened before the last deluge that would have coincided with the cycle that the Younger Dryas period was a part of? What happened?
I mean, it would have been whatever sunk Atlantis, I guess. I mean, humans were around. We talk about this time. Where did all this water come from anyway, all of a sudden?
Well, a lot of lore seems to mention water. You know, we have actually oceans of water under the Earth's crust. In Genesis 7:11 of the Bible, it states, Mari, Mari, Mari. Bible time!
In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened.
It seems far-fetched, but recently scientists have discovered oceans of water, hundreds of miles beneath the Earth's crust, that are more voluminous than the oceans above the crust.
Whoa.
Meaning there's more water under the crust than above it.
What?
Which should be, yes, which should be a point of interest, because in order for an ice age to happen, you don't just need it to be cold, you also have to have a lot of water, and that water has to come from somewhere.
What if there's animals living down there? Okay, just tangent time.
I can show you the world.
Those vast underground waterways are one of the few places I've explored astrally. I'm not very good at doing it while I'm awake, so it's not many places I've been, but I kind of think that's where we go when we die. In those waterways underneath the crust. Like a dark womb of the Earth.
I'm headed straight for the black hole at the center of our galaxy.
You would.
I'm doing it. For centuries, scientists have pushed the concept of something called uniformitarianism, where the many versions of Earth's continental arrangements were dictated by a slow-moving, gradual process of drifting apart or together. However, if the Earth itself has a catastrophe cycle, then it's possible the earthquaking, fiery apocalypse that we discussed in the last episode would give way to the watery and icy apocalypse that we're discussing in this episode.
Because you're hot, then you're cold. You're yes, then you're no. You're in, then you're out. You're up, then you're down.
Yeah. The Pacific Ice Dam flood of the Pacific Northwest was proven as factual by J. Harlan Bretz. So this was the cause of huge 50-foot ridges you can still see today in the Camas Prairie of Montana and also down through Washington and Idaho. This was the Missoula flood from the end of the last ice age. So you know when you see the little ripples left in sand from the ocean when the tide goes out?
Yeah.
So these formations are like that, but scaled way the F up. Think like 300 to 400 million cubic feet per second of water ravaging over the land. And that's what you need to create those ripples. That's hundreds of times greater in scale than the Niagara Falls. And we're just talking about the aftermath of water receding.
It's kind of spooky.
Yeah. Scientists are also now discovering evidence of this exact magnitude of flooding from all over the world, including even bigger ones.
Why is God always getting so angry with us?
Because you touch yourself at night.
Furries?
Furries. It's all the furries' fault. Mari, it's all your fault.
Too many DLC packages?
You don't thank the heavenly cow for your milk.
Yeah, thank the heavenly cow before you suck down more of its glorious milk down your fat gullet.
That's right. So we also discovered quite a large amount of evidence as far as sunken cities go. But for some reason, it still seems ridiculous to many people that these could be indicators of a catastrophic immediate flood.
Sunken cities, that's where zombies are made.
I think this is a great time to remind people that oftentimes the difference between what is considered pseudoscience and legitimate science is merely a matter of time. I mean, look at quantum physics. You keep going back. We thought that the Earth didn't go around the sun. They were like, no, that's fucked.
We thought Diddy was a rapper.
Yeah, exactly. So looking at immediate catastrophic flood scenarios, one example comes from the heads on Easter Island, which do have entire bodies buried beneath them.
I really thought this was hokum until I made Heka show me the receipts.
You can look it up. There are over 1,000 heads on that tiny and remote island in the middle of the ocean. This seems to indicate that the large statues were buried by mud. Like, why would you build a giant statue like that and then only leave the head sticking out? Like, you wouldn't bury it, dig it down, put it in there, and then bury it all up.
No, because it's cool.
So it just so happens that the location where Easter Island is seems to coincide with the lost civilization of Mu, or at least a portion of it.
As the god of cheap deals and slave labor.
Temu, exactly. The name Mu also makes me think of the Egyptian god Atem, Atum, or Temu. There's a bunch of fishy stuff also going on with Easter Island. The Chilean government had an official map of the island in 1870, which clearly showed Tartara located on the northwestern end of the island.
No!
At a large mound.
That's what those internet people always talk about is Tartaria. It's right next to Turkestan.
So it's actually on this map from 1870 from the Chilean government, and it's located on the northwestern end of the island at a large mound, same landmass.
Whoa.
And then you have indigenous wooden tablets known as Rongo Rongo boards that were seized and destroyed by the government shortly after. Those tablets were covered in Boustrophedenic hieroglyphs that the local inhabitants of the island were not able to read.
Oh.
Like, we revered our ancestors so much. We built these giant statues and buried most of them. Oh, by the way, we didn't listen to our ancestors when they tried to teach us how to decipher the language? Doesn't make sense.
So you're saying
No.
it was aliens, right?
No. I mean, whatever, if that's what you want to think. But yeah, you can look these up. The Rongo Rongo boards, the ones that we can see today, appear to be shoddy fakes. They're not even well done. And they'll tell you straight up that they're replicas. This entire thing is a whole other rabbit hole to fall down, though. So I don't know, maybe we should do an episode specifically for the lost continents and their connections to other past civilizations. But moving on, there is tons of evidence out there for sunken city. We have old maps like the Perigree map from the 1500s that show things like Antarctica before it was officially discovered. And the Bahamas as one big island instead of a bunch of small ones. The maker of the map claimed to have copied it from an older map.
Back when Antarctica was some verdant grassland.
Could very well be. And the Bahamas also have a bunch of sunken structures located around it, like Bimini Road, and they have a sunken pyramid. And while we're at it, there's a sunken pyramid structure off the coast of Japan called the Yonaguni Monument, estimated to be over 10,000 years old. Oh, that date.
That's the one with the big steps.
Yeah. And then another one off St. Bernard Parish, estimated to be, guess what, 12,000 years old? Multiple pyramids off the coast of Cuba, Azores, Portugal, the Gulf of Cambay, India, and even in Rock Lake, Wisconsin. It goes on and on and on. There's just way too many to mention.
Oh, Tony, they got pyramids in the Midwest. That's the problem with Atlantis. We keep finding it. So long story short, there probably was a great flood. Even mainstream sciences had to come to acknowledge it to some extent. And of course, it's reflected in cultural mythology. The question is, how does this relate to cycles and ages? Of the occult variety. Stuff you read in old grimoires and monuments and, that kind of stuff. The Da Vinci Code.
Right, and they consider these things like prophetic.
Yes.
And a lot of these Renaissance folk were painting and creating sculptures, right? And they were also at the same time alchemists by all rights. They were learning occult knowledge while they were also working for the church doing these paintings. And we are told when we visit these cathedrals, like this goes for any culture really too, if you go to any holy site, that everything that's there and depicted, it's essentially there for a reason and there is a lesson behind it, right?
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, churches are somewhat like a school, and you're learning about the soul or the spirit world and faith power, right? It's almost like science, and it's like elementary school, especially in the opening chapters when you're taking in whatever message, the site. And I'm talking about like a cathedral, right? It's supposed to, almost like a Japanese garden, it's like a walkthrough. It's stuck to be a certain way.
It's a depository of mystic wisdom. I mean, that's why they call it eschatology. It's the study of the end of the world. Like, you can infer meaning and prophecy from spending time in that environment.
So just to, kind of ring the bell back to our older episode called Elemental Magic, we sort of explained how INRI is a coded symbol. It's coded wisdom. And those 4 letters are usually seen above Jesus, right? And he's been crucified.
Yes. Or they're arranged around, the rosy cross at the points.
Yes. So we also explained, and if you learn elemental magic, how those 4 letters are references to the 4 elements. And then if you add Jesus in the middle of it, he's operating as a 5th element, and it is the pentagram. pentagram ritual in terms of the symbolism of it. The cross is the 4 elements and he's the 5th, right?
Yes. He's got 5 wounds as well that correspond to this.
Right, and as we've been alluding to for a while now, the thread that is pulled when you're looking deeper into this use of the symbol through the occult knowledge, right, of especially the West, where we have statues and monuments, secrets. It's crazy when you look at the history of how far back it really goes. And that thread, it unravels so much about our world that seems so crazy, but at the same time, these sculptors and painters are talking about these, catastrophes at the same time, that they're prophesizing a future event because these things are in cycles.
It's like how we talked about on the show, Christianity didn't just appear fully formed out of nowhere. It had to adopt the old practices and the old wisdom. And it seems like the Christian mysteries included this catastrophe cycle. I mean, so much of Christian mysticism, of course, is eschatology, the end times. But what if the alchemists, what if the occultists in the Christian scene knew that it didn't just happen once, that it was cyclical?
Right, and this is a motif that Christianity, when its empire grew to essentially control the Western world, it eradicated a lot of cultural traditions, but it absorbed a lot of them at the same time. And this elemental idea of the 4 directions, by all respects, that each direction and the element have a association with each other. It's integral to Christianity because these 4 directions and looking at the stars, especially as a human on Earth in reference to where you are in the galaxy, it showed mankind time. That's the true clock we have. All of time is based off of some reference point in the stars until we made the atomic clock, of course.
God's clock is, in fact, the sky.
So this is something that Christianity couldn't even get rid of because it's integral to their religion. And it is a very interesting question, why is time so important then? Because things end in cycles and begin again. And it just amazes me that we can go very far back into human history and see evidence that ancient humans had knowledge of the stars and were pretty close mathematically in each of their respective tongues and ways of depicting it in how many years these cycles take. And it's about 6,000 years. You see weird things happening 12,000 years ago, right? 10,000 years ago. And in these weird periods where, they know things happened in the past without even having to be there. And we know what we know because they recorded it themselves. So these monuments are very interesting.
In preparation for this episode, you turned me on to an old Vincent Bridges video where I believe he's lecturing in Prague or somewhere, and he has a translator. Yeah. And he's talking about basically how he duped the History Channel into dating a document that he was hoping to bait the History Channel and be like, oh, it's this lost thing of Nostradamus, but he was trying to prove if it was an old Cathar document. And what was crazy is as I watched the video, it became evident that he's explaining that this Cathar document is explaining a catastrophe cycle. It does correspond to Aquarius and Leo, and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah, it starts with Leo and Regulus, and it's a weird set of 7 images that one of the images apparently the Vatican was very sensitive about and didn't want him to release it to the public. And he's a weird talker, but the images themselves are quite interesting, and they do have astrological depictions. And the way he spins the narrative is that this stuff is passed down through the Rosicrucians and stuff, and this knowledge of time and it's essentially star magic. It's passed down by the light side of the force, and this stuff is still in all religions because this is the important part of it all, and that we can you can save the world. It's kind of new agey stuff that you have to see these symbols and then react to it because the future is malleable and it's shifty because math, right? And if you put the right function in there, you can change the future. But it's magic. It's very rich stuff in my opinion.
It's closer to the 5th element than I would like to admit. One of the things you turned me on to was this thing called the Great Cross of Hendaye in southern France. Just look at the wiki. For hundreds of years, people have speculated about its meaning, and you can superimpose the tarot over it in such a way that suggests quadrants of the sky and a cycle that corresponds to Aquarius and the sun, specifically an angry sun. And as we continue in the episode, you'll see how apt some of these symbols are pertaining to the cycles of cataclysms. And here it is, hiding out in Christianity.
Right. Part of the 2012 lore is some comet would come close to Earth, right?
According to some. Yeah, well, some of us believed that Planet X was going to come by on this crazy orbit, and then when it
Nibiru.
did, the lizard people got close to the sun, and because they're cold-blooded, they get all excited and horny, And they like come down and use Earth as like this like horny hotel where they listen to EDM music and kill people and drink their blood, and it's like a giant rave, and they're all dressed like Romans. That's the important part. Like they got the leather dresses on, and they're just like, the lizard. And then they leave on their ship, but in so doing, it like flips the poles, and we're kind of like dependent on them. It's a mess. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and this Henday cross apparently has like a reference to the comet on one of its depictions too. And I think it's kind of interesting because we have like a new satellite that's above Earth right now. There's like some fairly large comet that's just like hanging out in our orbit for a little bit.
I mean, there was news on the interwebs of a giant object that was moving towards Earth, and then everyone was like, no, it's not true. Our community notes it. Nothing is real. But like, I used to think it was kind of dumb. They like, oh, we saw signs in the sky, and that's how we knew weird stuff was going to happen. It's like, that doesn't matter what's in the sky. It doesn't influence. Like, actually it does. Like, all that stuff moving around up there really does influence stuff down here.
Yeah, you can even just Google, like, are we going to have another moon for a bit? And you'll find scientific articles that are talking about this comet that Melikor brought up.
There was literally this morning a lady in 7-Eleven. Wasn't that the verse we read? 7-Eleven? It's kind of fun.
7-Eleven.
She was like, there's going to be a second moon. And I just kind of like cocked my head. And I was like, okay, lady. And then she started cutting up the jib with me, with the lady at the register. She was like, what's your sun sign? What's your moon sign? Oh, that's your tarot card. And the lady behind the register is like, Aquarius, water sign. And I was like, actually, it's an air sign. She's like, yeah, it is an air sign, but it's a water bear. She like knew what she was talking about. It was just a chance happening run-in. So this lady said there was going to be a second moon. I didn't believe her. That sounds like some bullshit to me. I'm gonna be real.
But I told you about it.
Oh, come on, man. Really? A second moon?
Yeah, a little tiny big.
By definition, yeah. Well, we have a bunch of artificial moons. We have a bunch of artificial satellites. This is just going to be the second one we've had that's natural.
I'm not fairly skeptical person. That's why the research on the show continues to astound and amaze me. Is because you read the most simplistic, like derp breakdown of something, it's usually false, but there's usually some truth in there too. And then the truth is way weirder than the derp. And at this point, it's scaring me.
So I think I figured out how some big puzzle pieces we've talked about recently fit together with this episode's topic.
Because as it turns out, this all relates to some of the big ideas we've discussed recently, specifically in terms of the Brotherhood of Saturn, the new Aeon of Aleister Crowley, and, of course, the New Age of Aquarius. One place we thought we found these ideas reflected was, of course, in Fritz Lang's Metropolis, and it featured prominently in Aquarius Leo symbolism. For those unawares, or like me, that get lost in the weeds easily, these motifs likely appeared in Fritz Lang's early cinema classic because the intellectual underground, especially in Germany, was abuzz with excitement over the dawning of the Age of Aquarius. To clarify exactly what that means, some explanation might be in order. We know that the Earth spins on its axis, like a top. Also, like most tops, the spin is not perfect. It wobbles a little bit. If you put a big laser pointer on the spinny point in the middle, the axis of rotation, the precession of the equinoxes is such that as the top spins, the wobble makes the laser make a little circle. And in so doing, it makes it so the sun rises in a different part of the constellation during the spring equinox. Like it just changes a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit each year until the next big year, so to speak, is when the sun rises in a totally different sign, hence the Age of Aquarius. So while Aquarius is associated with social movements, it too, for obvious reasons, as a water bear pouring out water, is associated with flooding, which is a central motif of Fritz Lang's film Metropolis, and it precludes the happily ever after. So if Fritz Lang's Metropolis has encoded secret wisdom in it, it also has the flood encoded into it.
I thought this was really interesting, so I decided to see if this motif was somehow reflected in the actual historical ages that correspond to the zodiac, and see if this has anything to do with the 10 to 12,000 year catastrophe cycle that we're learning about, and it does.
Oh boy. In ancient Egyptian astronomy, Aquarius was associated with the annual flood of the Nile. The banks were said to flood when Aquarius put his jar into the river, beginning spring. In Babylonian star catalogs, Aquarius is identified with Gula, the Great One, and represents the Promethean water god Ea himself, who's commonly depicted holding an overflowing vase.
This imagery is also seen in the Dendara zodiac with the imagery of the blue-skinned hermaphroditic god Happy pouring the heavenly water from vases onto Earth. This particular motif utilizes the same artistic motifs as the depictions of the chaotic waters of Noon, the primordial waters in anthropomorphic form. So this is bearded blue flood man with boobies.
Oh, so
Yeah.
like the symbolism used in the opening ceremony of the Olympics.
What a coincidence.
Oh, wow.
It's almost like it's not exactly satanic, it's worse. Oh, man.
For a big long rant about that, hit me up in our Discord server for sure.
No one wants to
Um,
know. Everyone's happy thinking it's the devil. It's so much worse than the devil.
It's so much worse.
It's so much worse.
So Happy is a microscopic expression of a macrocosmic energy. And so the yearly floods were seen as heavenly caused floodwaters manifest on Earth. In reality, our earthly environment is greatly influenced by the cosmic heavens of space and its weather.
Well, these mythologies correspond to yearly flooding cycles. Is there a possibility they also correspond to larger, more catastrophic flooding cycles? Ea is closely related to the same Enki, and depending on who you're talking to, this is the same deity who, according to the ancient Sumerian and Akkadian myths, who helps out the pre-biblical Noah figure survive the deluge by tipping them off that they should build an ark. So, if the Age of Aquarius, with all its flooding symbolism, like pertaining to right now, why supposedly did all this flooding stuff happen in the past? What exactly is going on?
So I started to think, if Leo is the opposite zodiacal pole of Aquarius, would the age of Leo give us any clues to this flood cycle?
Good question.
Since Leo and Aquarius are on opposite sides of the zodiac, it means they are 6 signs apart. If Leo is the 5th, that makes Aquarius the 11th sign. It takes roughly 2,000 years for the precession of the equinoxes to traverse a sign. 6 times 2,000 is 12,000 years. There we go again.
Uh-oh.
There we go.
We know that the age of Leo occurred from 10,700 BCE to 8,600 BCE. And in case you don't want to do the math yourself, the age of Leo lasted from 10,624 to 12,724 years ago. Exactly where we would expect it to be as a part of the catastrophe cycle.
Oh boy.
If we're entering into the age of Aquarius, do we have any clues this happened from, say, 12,000 years ago, aside from what we just went over at the beginning of the show? Well, it turns out that we do, and there's a lot of it. If you've noticed so far, the 10 to 12,000 years thing keeps coming up.
I'm really starting to worry that the political party ruling Germany during World War II maybe knew about this and then took their UFOs to Antarctica. I'm concerned.
They did seem to have some special interests, if you will.
That's why we need a good space program so we can have expeditions to the center of the Earth, to the moon, to find these Nazis and flush them out and steal their technology so we can usher in an era of freedom and peace for the galaxy, space freedom.
You lost me. I'm thinking about dinosaurs.
Well, tell us about the dinosaurs.
Okay, so on top of fossil evidence and geological evidence for mass flooding, we also have the mass amounts of human records of floods that we've mentioned. When there are over 40 flood myths across the globe, it starts to seem more like global history than just coincidental cultural myths. Which got me thinking, what about the astrological associations to it? And my brain just kept connecting dot after dot after dot. You know what other myths seem to span across the globe? Certain astrological myths like that of Orion as a hunter. Why is that?
He's all over the place. He's the hunter everywhere you look.
All over the globe, apparently before we had global culture.
Yeah.
So the constellations, Sagittarius and Orion, they have a special relationship since they're in opposition to each other. More specifically, the stars that make up Sagittarius's bow are in opposition to Orion. Sagittarius's bow points to Scorpius's stinger, but it also points directly at our galactic center, which just happens to be a black hole called Sagittarius A star.
Right next to Orion, usually considered opposite in Sagittarius in the zodiac, is the constellation Gemini, whose zodiacal glyph often depicts a door. The Roman god of doors was, of course, Janus, the two-faced deity and opener of the way. Janus was also the god of beginnings and endings, presiding over the new year, so maybe galactic years as well.
New eras.
We find the same grouping of ideas regarding threshold, guardians, twins, the new year, arrows, etc. in the Egyptian pair of deities Anubis and Lepewet.
A show favorite.
Yes.
So this is a thick soup. The nome of Lycopolis, or Wepawet, was directly associated to Aquarius. We also have the whole Sopdet myth of Sirius rising to signify the flood of the Nile, and the many myths regarding dogs that relate to it across cultures, including Anubis assisting Isis Sopdet Sirius in her search for Osiris or Sa or Orion. When Sirius is in its upper culmination, that's when Aquarius rises on the horizon.
Yeah, we've talked about the connection between dogs and floods. It's about to become very evident as we continue in this show. And then the whole thing about the doors and the Wepawet and this entire tapestry of ideas is, without going down the rabbit hole, I think it's being invoked by the opening of Coppola's Apocalypse Now, right down to the name of the band and what they're singing about and what the movie's about and what the movie's secretly about. It's all the stuff we're talking about. That's why it's my favorite movie.
The door. This is the end. There's also an interesting link here with Sagittarius, since the second decan of Sagittarius in ancient Egypt is Shesmu, called Sesmi in Greek. Shesmu is a lion-headed god very directly related to violent flooding and considered the complementary duality to Nefertem, the divine child lotus god. Obviously, lotuses sprouting from mud, and we've discussed this pairing in previous episodes.
A god of rebirth.
Yep. As far as our black hole, Sagittarius A star, we're definitely going to bring the galactic central point up later, and that's because this is a large web of interconnectedness that just keeps on giving.
Open sesame. Gates of Janus. Open the floodgates. Release the hounds. Oh, my head. Oh, and the memes.
Yep.
They're converging.
As for Orion, according to Greek myths, Apollo tells Artemis to shoot an arrow at the boastful hunter.
Oh.
In another variation, she sends a scorpion to sting Orion to death.
Oh, what could that mean?
When Orion was made into a constellation, he requested that the scorpion stay on the opposite end of the sky. He's like, no, that thing, that stays over there. And we can see that is, the stinger of scorpion is in close proximity to Sagittarius's bow on the opposite side. In many myths, Sagittarius is depicted as a guardian of Orion, protecting him from the scorpion.
That's what Wepawet does for the pharaoh.
Yep, and not all versions of Sagittarius are benevolent, though. In ancient China, Sagittarius was known as the tiger, another great cat. This is where we start to see some mass flooding themes becoming related to Sagittarius, which is actually a fire sign, right? But we have all this flood symbolism. So the bow of Sagittarius has metaphorically been regarded as the bow of promise set in the cloud that succeeds the deluge. The cloud in this metaphor being the Milky Way, and the promise referring to the promise of the flood. Sagittarius again pointing to the galactic center as the cause of the flood. But we're going to get to that. The Jews regarded the archer as the tribal symbol of Ephraim and Manasseh, which together form the house of Joseph as his two sons, and their names translate to fruitfulness and forgetting.
Also called being a sellout.
The Akkadian name for Sagittarius translates to light of the white face or smiting sun face. Kind of intimidating. And cuneiform inscriptions designate Sagittarius as the strong one, the giant of war, and the illuminator of the great city.
All of those would be perfect ways to describe what we learned about nuclear weaponry last week. The awesome power of the sun.
Can I give people some tips real quick?
No,
Sure.
they're going to have to pay $5 because the money won't mean anything to them.
No. Tips to prep to be free.
No, if you want to hear Heka's practical survival tips for when this does happen, you're not going to live anyway, so don't pay me the $5. You're screwed anyway. But if you want to give it the old college try, then you can check out the extended version of this episode at www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you this extended episode, but every single one of our episodes going back 5 years. Maybe too many episodes for you to listen to in a month. So I'm going to get $10 out of you.
And apparently my tips for prepping.
Yeah.
Because Husbando won't let me just give them away for free.
Nope, I will send you a 5x5 high-quality vinyl sticker for a Big Bunny bathroom cover art, which will probably survive the apocalypse somewhere at some point. And
It'll be an out-of-place artifact.
you'll get the secret keys to our Discord server where you can ask us questions about how to prep even better than Heka's about to tell you in the extended show. And
It's true.
if that didn't scare you, then get ready to eat carrots and shoot lasers.
Pew pew.
Pew-pew.